Hello, this is C. Marshall, and this is my review of Hand of Fate. The game is currently on Steam and selling for $19.99. It doesn't take much to tell a story, and if done correctly, pushing things into their most basic forms can amplify the listener's involvement because of the requirement of creative thinking. In Hand of Fate, wild encounters, betrayals, and general dungeon crawling are all done in the simplest possible fashion. Its success is found in asking for the involvement of the player's imagination and some clever twists and combinations of old gameplay ideas. It's really hard to describe Hand of Fate. It's got a bit of D&D, Rocksteady's Batman, roguelikes, and a few more. It's certainly a strange game, and one that's quite fun even though it works against itself in some areas. It's easiest to describe as a choose-your-own-adventure, with a steadily growing deck of cards defining the player's actions. Each level is its own self-contained thing, each have their own RPG-esque progression and equipment gathering, and all of this is done through the collection of cards to aid or hinder your journey forward, and also a few passive enhancements, which are stacked onto you as you beat bosses. Every facet of progression in the game has a wonderful visual representation. As your character moves through the levels, the cards are revealed and left turned upwards, and every weapon and piece of equipment has its own appearance, and so on. Most of the game is looking at the table and the man across from you, the dungeon master, I guess. He is wonderfully acted and is frequently making relevant quotes based on what a certain card does or something you're struggling with. He drives the game along and is a high point in the game's presentation, and always carries a healthy blend of motivation and hatred. He also matches your growth. With every power you unlocked, he also gains strength and a set of new tricks. The table itself is drenched in detail, from a burning candle that actually melts throughout a match, to this little spider that is constantly popping up. It looks great and is a totally unnecessary but awesome bit of visual flair. The game starts with a wonderful tutorial. It's simple and quick, and the basics are covered and explained in a fun and succinct form. It taught me how to play the game and made me excited to get into the thick of it. At the start of every level, you have to build a deck, and it's a nice addition allowing you to choose the equipment and encounters you wish to have shuffled into play. And if you have not seen these things out in the wild, you will not know their effects beyond the name of the card, so you can take a gamble or stick with what you know. But sometimes they will be locked into your hand to avoid the player making some weak-ass deck. The amount of cards you choose grows throughout the game, and I love how you can just click a recommended button to have the game decide which cards will work best, because by the end of it you have a ton of options. You begin with a tiny deck and some shitty equipment, but as you make your way to each boss fight you become stronger, richer, and struck down with a myriad of curses, or gifted with blessings from the cards you and the dealer initially choose. This miniature growth makes playing each level feel fresh and failure less daunting. Even though you will rarely fail, the game is pretty damn easy up until the last hour or so, where things get turned up to about 11. The game isn't so easy though that it loses your attention, and as new cards get added to the decks, new challenges will rear their heads, including mazes, tricky situations, and harder enemies in combat. Sometimes, even the bosses you have defeated will pop up. The combat's really fun for about half the game. It's visceral throughout, it's that Batman style of punching and parrying. The animations are a bit wonky. There aren't smooth transitions between animations, and parries have you flying all over the place. But connecting hits gives a good amount of feedback, and it's wonderfully responsive. I would definitely rather have this kind of responsiveness with poor animation transitions than the alternative. Also from Batman is that slow-mo zoom-in thing on a knockout. Building up a good string of hits gets the blood flowing because of this, but a problem I have is that as you build it up, the edges of the screen blur. They, I guess, are supposed to make things more intense, but it's so irritating, and I tried to turn it off by going to the settings, but that didn't happen. I have no idea what they were thinking there. Regardless, the combat looks good, and the arenas you fight in look great, and are relevant to the situation that brought them up. So that's really impressive. One side note, the ground attack animation is fucking hilarious. Like, what's going on here? The combat isn't the only time you'll be exiting the table though. You'll be sent off to solve little maze challenges or to visit assorted merchants. I really liked the mazes, even though like the rest of the game they never reach a level of difficulty that I would have wanted. The merchants sell and buy stuff, remove curses and sell blessings, and also a number of other things. Your primary purchases from them will be food. Food is the currency of life in this game, and with each step it lowers by 1. But with each step it also heals your character. If you are out of food though, it will hurt your character character with movement until you starve to death, and this is actually what killed me the most in the game, because of my unwarranted hubris or just a general lack of awareness. Everything is bought with gold, which is gained by taking risks in your encounters, fighting enemies, or just luck. If you have a problem with gambling, I would avoid this game. The game is mostly choice making. If an encounter doesn't end in combat, it often ends with a varied and cleverly written little story, which are solved with stuff like card shuffling minigames, or the payment of money, or the donation of food. The risks almost always bring rewards, but that goddamn card shuffling minigame appears far too much. And at first it seems randomly done, but you can actually predict the final card placement with some superhuman observation skills. They're all entertaining though, and tiny story arcs develop from some of the choices. You can assist forbidden lovers, which then unlocks an angry father card, and so on. It's quite cool how the choices will unlock new cards that carry the storylines along. They're a physical form of narrative. The game is really fun, but it has some serious problems that make even its short runtime seem unwelcome. Primarily, it just doesn't have enough variety. You're given new cards to spice things up, but they all distill into the same few solution systems. And that random spike at the end in difficulty is far too severe. If the ramp up was more steady, it might not seem so outrageous. Another tiring aspect is the user interface, which is all over the place. If using a mouse and keyboard, it's weirdly unresponsive and strangely organized. Accidental clicks would fuck me over, and the shop menus just seemed wrong. It doesn't help that there are these bizarre frame rate dips in the transitions from table to battle or shop. The control issues are almost entirely remedied if playing with a controller though, so keep that in mind, even though the frame rate dips will remain bothersome. The back to the basics approach to gameplay and RPG progression highlights the strengths and weaknesses of the respective games the developers took inspiration from. What could have been a complete clusterfuck is a wonderfully creative and utterly unique game. Currently, it's one of the brightest beacons of hope to come out of Kickstarter. The game has a bunch of bare-bones elements tied together into something seriously enjoyable, and I recommend it to pretty much anyone. This exhaustion that I experienced toward the end is probably halfway brought about by the fact that I played this in one sitting, basically, because I liked it so much. So, that says a lot. And I guess that's it. Thank you so much for watching.